Well, if you live in Wichita County, you might have noticed something a little different in the voting in the elections this week, or this today. Joining us now is Judge Woody Gossom. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you for giving us this opportunity to try to help people understand what went on, because it was an unusual number of events that came together. But one of the things that we're probably most proud of in all of this was the new equipment that was mandated to be purchased by the state functioned fine. Now, for some people it was a little different than they'd had before, and we'd had the training, but this all came very quickly in the time trying to get it. And we rushed that so we could get the maximum grant from the state. And the people from HART came, helped us conduct training sessions and all that. But still, it was like last night at our midday, all of a sudden, people didn't realize they were running out of the special paper that has to be run through the machines. So it was delivered throughout the county to all the locations, and so there was some delay in getting that there. And from a sense of integrity, Ms. Bohannon felt like she needed to deliver that, or one of her, people in her office that is an elections person, so that we maintain that control, knowing that was exactly right, nothing done blank paper delivered. So that was done. Last night when people were coming in, and gosh, anybody under the age of 50 that would like to work an election, the rest of us that work those are all pretty well past that. And especially, but this one lady came in last night, she had made one trip back to her location to get the cords she didn't bring in. Then they realized she didn't bring in the V chips that record all the election that day at that location. So one of our election workers drove out there. We managed to get a hold of the Region 9 director and get that opened back up and get that out of there. So that delayed the final count for the day of voting. And so the elections are really at the service to the Democratic and Republican Party chairs. They decided to release the voting for the day of voting, because the other voting took several steps. They had to run the early voting data before we stopped it and redid the people location, trying to get people back in the right election precinct. We ran the rest of it. So those two had to be run. Well, then we had to combine those figures manually, and that took hours. That actually, the ladies involved with that and the representative from HART were put in better than 30-hour days, probably. And it was a tremendous effort, but they sent me a picture of them all still working. I had left a little after midnight. There was really nothing else I could do. So they stayed and did that. We got that information, we got the final stuff. I went in and helped them get that distributed to everyone that we could. And Lori last night was texting the candidates to let them know what the results were. And so what's going to happen with the issues in JP4, now that's a very close race, and either of those candidates could ask a court to declare that election for that particular office void, and there would be a special election because the vote's very close. That way, then somebody says, well, what about the other elections? Well, the lucky thing for us, all the other elections were either county-wide or they were above the county level. There weren't contested races for state rep or state senator, so there was nothing to be affected there. So that the rest of the election was recorded and all correctly. The question could be that one JP race, because you have to look at the people that are in that election precincts that make up that JP4 area. So that's the one that's kind of hanging out there. Everything else went good. Like I say, the reports on the equipment, I only had 2 or 3 people that didn't like it, but considering that change and going to the fact that now we have a definite paper trail, it's not a tape, it is your vote that you cast.
Well, thank goodness. I mean, it might have been a delay, but it was all sorted out. But I will ask you, and correct me if I'm wrong, Justice of the Peace Precinct 4 was the race that had the issue during
Yes.
early voting.
Yes.
Did that similar issue that we've seen throughout the last few hours occur with that as well?
Well, that was really the only race that got caught up in that conundrum of people living in, let's say, KMA. And one gentleman I talked to, his wife's was exactly right. His had him living in Commissioner Precinct 3, which is up here. And that wasn't the case. He's a lifelong resident of KMA. But we were able to get his vote. But it could be likely that either of those candidates could ask for a redo of that election for the JP4 slot.
Any word of if that could be a potential, any word from either of the candidates?
I haven't heard anything from them. They were sent the ballot information, the text telling them the outcome. So I'm going to imagine, I know I talked to one of them, it was midnight probably, and actually both of them I talked to. I tried to call everybody and tell them where they were, because we were so late getting that out. And then the wonder is, okay, if you got, let's say, 2/3 of the election counted here, that 1/3 could make a difference still if you were reasonably close. But oddly enough, the percentages from that election day results stayed pretty close to the same when you combined them.
Oh goodness, I know that's a crazy situation for sure. And one of my last questions that I will ask, I know there was a lot of redistricting within the precincts this year. I believe anyway. Did that also play a part whenever you're having to reassign
Yes.
certain areas?
Well, we did. And, you know, I don't know whether the Secretary of State's office or anybody encouraged the governor or the legislature to move back. But instead, where there's usually 2 to 3 months to build all this information, it was 6 weeks. And one of the firms that used to do that dropped out of the business. The firm we worked with, who we worked with 10 years ago, they had, I'm thinking the number was 144 counties. They were doing the redistricting information. And if people watched any of the public presentations, you know, they'd put big maps up and then they would do the circling, the data. The software is really cool what it could pull together. Its mapping part of it didn't hold up to be as good as the rest of it, but trying to also, one of the things you had to do was Senate District 30 starts down through the county on I-44 and then comes down and whips out to the east and then goes north and then comes back around. I mean, why? Because that finger that went up, no one lives in that. But somebody in Austin doing that, doing the best they can, didn't realize, but gosh, that irregularity didn't help us. Well, we had to wait until all that came in before we could start sorting out the counties. And we did the stuff. The commissioners' precincts are the only thing covered under the one man, one vote. But there was something, and I remember this from 30 years ago. I don't know why the commissioners' precincts and the JPs and the constables, they don't just align all together. But we did try, and one of the reasons would be if that JP precinct 4, you think, okay, that's the electoral precinct. Well, that was under the old one. It comes down and comes into, all 4 commissioners have to come into Wichita Falls to try to get an equal number of voters, residents within their precincts. So it really looks like somebody drew that Saturday night going home from a great time somewhere.
I know. I don't know. Who knows where they got the concept of it, whether they thought it was, you know.
Well, it came out of a court decision on the one man, one vote rule.
Right.
Yeah.
Goodness, who knows what was in their frame of mind? Maybe it just looked nice on paper, you know? Sometimes it can come down to those, who knows? But is there anything else? You broke that down so beautifully. Thank you so much. Is there anything you'd like to add about the situation that we may not have covered?
For the most part, voters were patient and understanding, and I think most of them just wanted an explanation, and we did that. You know, we talked about absolutely incredible kids. I'm going to send the ladies that worked on that an absolutely incredible kid day later, because they really did work very hard and diligent and didn't say, well, we're going home, going to bed. They stayed and did their job.
Well, we sure appreciate them staying and working overtime to get that out to the public and to get everyone's information out as soon as possible. And we definitely appreciate you being here to help us clear up the mix-up and fill in our viewers in and the community in.
Okay. Well, thank you for the time to do that.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Uh-huh.